Tonight, new rules for fans as the Jays make a run for the playoffs back home.
I kept it from when I got my last dose.
I'm fine with showing my vaccination status. I have no problem at all doing it.
The Jays are gunning for a playoff spot in a tight wild card race, but if you want to catch them in action at the Rogers Centre, you'll have to follow some new rules. Plus,
my message is about freedom. People need a choice.
This kind of harassment and intimidation at this particular place is really repugnant.
The condemnation was swift as protesters target hospitals across the country, including Toronto General, angry over COVID-19 restrictions. And
the provincial government has not given any guidelines for what air quality standards there should be in these classrooms.
ventilation is a top concern with kids now back in school. What the TDSB is doing to improve air quality in all classrooms, and why some experts say inequity still exists even with the upgrades. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. The Toronto Blue Jays kicked off their final homestand of the regular season tonight. The Jays returned home as the hottest team in the league right now, having won 11 of their last 12 games. And from now on, fans who want to catch the team in action at home will have to follow some new rules. Our Greg Ross joins us live from the Rogers Centre. And Greg, fans who went to see the Jays in person tonight needed more than just a ticket.
That's right, Kelda. Starting tonight, fans need to show proof of a COVID-19 vaccine if they want to come down to a Blue Jays game, or show a negative COVID test taken within 48 hours of game time and taken by a healthcare provider. Now, fans who were able to do that for this game here tonight were treated to another big Blue Jays victory.
Hooks it down the left field line. Goal!
The Blue Jays bats were at it again tonight. The perfect game for Greg Smith to take his mother to.
It's the first game of the year for both of us.
And Jean Smith was ready with her vaccine receipt in hand, feeling safer about being here.
Much safer.
The vast majority of people in the stands at this game were fully vaccinated. An added sense of security for Sonia Tavares, who didn't feel quite as safe at games she went to earlier this season when people didn't have to show proof of vaccination.
And that was probably one of the main reasons I did it, to protect myself. And so just knowing people are protected, you know, that little bit is definitely helpful for sure.
Golf to left field, it's well hit.
The fact that Jays are playing so well might be incentive for some fans to get the shot. They've gone from a team that seemed out of it to a team right in the thick of the playoff race.
But to do what we just did is freaking unbelievable.
It's a dangerous lineup, so we're excited to, see what we can do down the stretch here.
This is a special team with a special group of guys.
It definitely is a special team. Another big win for the Blue Jays tonight, beating the Tampa Rays 8-1. They are currently in sole possession of the first wild card spot in the American League. And if they can hang on to that spot for the next few weeks, that means they'll host a wild card game here at the Rogers Centre. That would definitely be a hot ticket. But if you want to get one, Kelda, you have to have proof of vaccine.
That's right. Thanks so much, Greg. And go Jays. That's our Greg Ross reporting live for us from the Rogers Centre tonight. Well, today was the last day to vote in the advance polls for the federal election, and there were some long lines outside polling stations tonight. This is the scene outside S.H. Armstrong Community Center near Queen and Greenwood at around 8:30. The polls closed at 9, but officials said anyone who joined the line before 9 would be allowed to vote. We heard reports of some people waiting over an hour and a half to cast their ballot. And this is the line earlier this afternoon outside Jimmy Simpson Recreation Center. We know that the turnout for advance polls have seen a slight uptick this election compared to 2019. Elections Canada said 1.3 million people voted on Friday. Advance polls are now closed, but you can vote at any Elections Canada office via the special ballot process until tomorrow at 6 p.m., which is also the deadline for registration to vote by mail. Anti-vaccine protests took place outside hospitals across the country today, including here in the GTA, where demonstrators gathered outside Toronto General Hospital, voicing their anger over vaccine mandates. Our Chris Glover was there.
This is medical tyranny.
The anti-vaccine protesters at Toronto General Hospital were loud but few. My message is about freedom. People need a choice.
I believe that's right.
Some were shouted down by counter-protesters.
If you're worried about your health, do you eat sugar? Do you eat grease? It's about yes, choice. It is.
Police were on hand to ensure patients could access the hospital, but brain tumor patient Chris Masushi says he still felt unsafe.
Just makes me fear for my life. I'm already going through something pretty traumatic, and unfortunately, this just adds to it.
The protests were organized by a group called Canadian Frontline Nurses.
I love nurses. I'm a nurse myself.
Toronto nurse Sarah Shajunian is co-founder. She's been fired for her views around COVID and says her license is currently under investigation by the College of Nurses.
We're here because we want to support also the nurses inside that are being coerced into taking the jab or losing their jobs.
But the condemnation for bringing their political fight to hospitals has been swift.
This kind of harassment and intimidation at this particular place is really repugnant.
From the medical community to political leaders.
They're irresponsible, they're misdirected, they're abusive.
Toronto's mayor called out the protesters for targeting the sick and those caring for them.
Where do we get off making them the victims of a political argument that people are quite entitled to have if they want?
Around 10,000 people signed a nurses' petition to create safe zones around hospitals.
Come here to Queen's Park and put your protests where it belongs.
The NDP says its safe zone legislation that would make it an offense to harass or intimidate outside places like hospitals is drafted and just needs the government to recall the legislature to make it law.
I want to say to Doug Ford, it's not good enough to simply tell people not to do it. We have the opportunity here at Queen's Park to put legislation in place.
But no recall and no idea if the Premier even supports that bill. Doug Ford did tweet his outrage today, calling the protests outside hospitals selfish, cowardly, and reckless, demanding people leave healthcare workers alone. The Registered Nurses Association of Ontario says the safe zone legislation is needed now.
To block people from accessing the emergency care that they need, their regular follow-up care, is unconscionable, and we need this to stop now.
And while no patients had their access to the hospital blocked during today's protest, the Nurses Association was very clear they condemned any and all nurses who took part in today's protest. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
School ventilation is under the microscope as we enter the second week of another pandemic school year. While the TDSB has been dealing with a hefty repair backlog for years, the pandemic has brought some of those repairs into sharper focus, specifically air quality. Our Angelina King has more.
Before the school year started, the Mayana kids were sad summer was coming to an end. But for Isabel, who's now a senior, it meant a big bonus: air conditioning.
The lucky thing is they got all the air conditioning over in the new part.
And in the old part?
Sometimes the heaters don't work, so in the winter it's usually pretty cold, but we have to keep the windows open due to because we have to have air circulation because of COVID. Some people wear their jackets, but we'd get really hot in the summer.
Her mom, Erin Mayana, loves the staff at Runnymede School. The building, not so much.
The kids today, they don't even know what a good condition looks like at their school. And it's hard to watch.
Erin Mayana is an architect and member of the advocacy group Fix Our Schools. She says this year ventilation is the top concern.
The provincial government has not given any guidelines for what air quality standards there should be in these classrooms. We've been pushing for that long before COVID.
The province says it takes ventilation seriously and spent more than $600 million in the past year to make improvements in every school. There are 3 types of ventilation: mechanical, partial mechanical, and non-mechanical, which means opening windows. In Toronto, there are about 100 public schools that rely on windows for airflow, more than half at the TDSB. The city's 2 largest school boards have put a HEPA filter in every classroom. So how do they work? HEPA stands for High Efficiency Particulate Air. The filter has a series of screens that can trap tiny particles even smaller than COVID. If trapped, they'll likely die quickly. Some particles, particularly medium-sized ones, may pass through, but they'll probably get damaged in the process and become less effective. They can be loud. The TDSB says they must run on the highest setting first thing in the morning, but can then be turned down. Energy engineer David Elfstrom says that's not safe.
It's like taking your open window and shutting it to a small little crack. It turns into filtration theater.
Even if kept on high, experts say a HEPA filter in each classroom still leads to inequity. Depending on the ventilation, one school may require 3 filters per classroom while another needs none to achieve the same air quality.
That's a huge problem. That goes back to the need to have actually measured CO2 levels in classrooms.
That's why experts and parents like Mayana are pushing the province to implement an air quality standard to ensure all Ontario students are getting the same level of protection against COVID-19. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
Meteorologist Colette Kennedy joins us now with a first look at the forecast. And Colette, a gray and cloudy day for the most part, and some of that heavy rain just missing us in the GTA.
Yeah, you know, it was kind of an interesting start because it started off so well and we had the sunshine and then the clouds were increasing. And this is all due to a system moving in that's going to have an impact on us over the next 24 to 36 hours. So today, that warm front, as it was making its way into southwestern Ontario, brought some active weather. Now, temperatures were in most cases either seasonal or just a little bit above, in fact, for Toronto at 24 degrees. But some of those storms, of course, with some heavy downpours kind of pushed through and eventually made their way there through the Niagara region. Get a little bit of instability and a few stray showers as we go through the overnight. But then tomorrow what happens, we're mostly into that warm sector, so the southwesterly flow kicks up. Temperatures, humidity go up as well. But what will happen is along the cold front, there'll be some storms developing. Some of those could be quite strong with some very heavy downpours, small hail, risk of some tornadic activity and damaging winds. So I'll go into this a little more a little later in the show, but just showing you the timing. This is tomorrow evening. Late tomorrow evening and into the overnight closer towards midnight. So just keep that in mind, folks.
Thanks, Colette. The city has extended the deadline for employees to disclose their vaccination status to Friday. That's to accommodate people without regular access to computers. Meanwhile, over half of Toronto's roughly 37,000 employees have already reported their status.
97% are either fully or partially vaccinated, 93% fully vaccinated. So that's a very good thing of those who have responded so far.
If you do not comply with the policy, the city does have the right to progressive discipline up to and including dismissal.
All City of Toronto employees must have both doses by the end of October, with exemptions for medical reasons. Meanwhile, Toronto Police Service members had until the end of today to report their vaccination status. The force is still developing their policy for refusal to comply. TTC staff must report by September 20th. London police are investigating sexual assault allegations at a Western University residence. Parties on Friday night in Sydenham Hall sparked rumors on social media about multiple sexual assaults. Western's vice president says the university isn't able to substantiate the rumors, but he does say the university received 4 complaints of sexual violence over the past week. Arrests related to those complaints have been made. Officials say they don't appear to be connected to each other or to what is being alleged on social media. In that case, the university is hoping to speak to anyone who may be involved, was a witness, or was assaulted. Now, in a statement, Western's vice president says, quote, "We have taken some immediate steps to ensure students' safety, including an increased presence of special constables on campus and an increased presence of staff and security in the residences. I want to be very clear, sexual violence will not be tolerated. Nothing is more important than the safety and welfare of our campus community." Toronto police are hoping some new composite sketches might lead to information in the case of a woman who hasn't been seen for nearly 2 decades. Anne-Marie Lafores was last seen in 2004, but only reported missing by her family in 2019. She was known to frequent the Greater Toronto area, but may have been a hairdresser in Peterborough. Lafores is now 62 years old and believed to be around 110 pounds with a fair complexion, blonde hair, and green eyes. Anyone with information is asked to contact police or Crime Stoppers. The City of Toronto and the province are providing a funding boost to the film industry in hopes of expanding opportunities for BIPOC workers. An $800,000 grant will be given to the city's XOTO Screen Industry Pathways Initiative.
Need to have an even deeper and even more diverse pool of people to use. Your people are great. They are perhaps more diverse than we might see elsewhere, but we need them to be deeper and more of them and more diverse.
Funding will be used to train 200 people of color to work in the industry. It will also create or expand on 6 programs to address labor gaps in film. Mayor John Tory says the programs will help diversify Toronto's film landscape and allow for more inclusive storytelling. With 1 week left until the federal election, campaigns are kicking into high gear. In the GTA, much of the focus will be on suburban areas where the race is tight between the Liberals and Conservatives, especially in York Region. Now, in Peel Region, eyes will be on whether the Liberals can hold on to their 11 seats. I sat down with political strategist and Brampton resident Jaskaran Sandhu to talk about how things are shaping up in this final week. Will the GTA decide this election?
Yeah, I think this is a fun question and the one that people often ask. And not to kind of like discredit every other riding in this country. You know, every single one is important. The GTA, though, has like this outsized role in kind of determining an election. And the density and the population here obviously plays a significant impact on, you know, the seat counts that you need to form government.
What ridings are you particularly keeping an eye on as we head into this final week?
As a Brampton man, obviously I care deeply for this city and seeing what happens here. But there is like an interesting dynamic to this city. You know, Brampton, we like to joke, is kind of like the Ohio of Canada. The direction Brampton goes, you know, that's the government that forms.
Now, back in 2019, Liberals, they took all 5 ridings here in Brampton. At the beginning of the campaign, it seemed Liberals pretty confident across the board. But have you seen a shift?
Jagmeet Singh obviously has an impact in this city. There is a bit of an impact with the NDP here, and provincially you saw that success and kind of an outlier of success in this city. And I think that's a fear for a lot of Liberals right now, is that the NDP does well enough to take votes away from, let's say, that progressive base, but not enough to secure a victory, but provide a pathway to Conservatives. And I think that's something that's worth watching here in Brampton.
Sandhu says one consistent theme being brought up at the doors is why an election was called in the first place. Many voters questioning the decision, and that could hurt the Liberals.
There is a general frustration with Justin Trudeau that seems to be popping up again. Maybe not all that different from other parts of the country, but it is a bit of a surprise here, considering how popular the brand here was at one point. And it's being discussed in light of other issues here, right? Like housing is incredibly important here. Affordability issues are really important here, and what does post-pandemic recovery look like? And I think a lot of people are starting to scrutinize the Liberal government a little harder because of this election and the fact that what was done over the last 6 years. And in fact, the housing issue here has got worse over the last 6 years. Whether or not that actually results in punishing the Liberals here is yet to be seen, but there's definitely chatter happening. There's a shift happening. I think that goes for a lot of parts of the GTA, especially the western end of the city, where I think Conservatives feel more ambitious about their chances, or the northern half of GTA as well, where there's a very strong opportunity to either capture seats that were lost after Harper stepped down from 2018.
This final week of the campaign, what do you think we will see from some of the local candidates?
What happens in this last week is critically important, especially for a lot of folks that may have been disengaged. If we look back to 2015, Trudeau and the Liberal Party were third coming into that election. Now that election was much longer, but you really felt the ground shift in that last 2 weeks, even though there was almost 3 months of campaigning. So things can turn on a dime, and they can shift very quickly. And I think every campaign at the ground level knows that. Sometimes when a wave comes, you just catch the wave. And sometimes when a leader is really popular, that lifts all boats. This election doesn't feel that way.
A little bit of cloud cover this evening, remaining partly cloudy overnight as a warm front makes its way towards us. Currently, it is 18 degrees in downtown Toronto. All right, let's go back to Colette now. And Colette, we can expect temperatures to go up tomorrow with some intense weather late in the day.
Yeah, that's right, Kelda. We're going to see those temperatures going up. And what folks might notice even more is the humidity going up with humidex values in the mid-30s. I want to kind of take some time to take you through the timing with this system, because most of the active weather we're looking at with it is really late day on Tuesday. So you might be kind of fooled by the conditions that we have through the mid portions of the day. Now, this is the timing for tonight. So we're starting off here as we're heading through this hour and then the overnight hours. A few light stray showers that will be be seeing. These aren't that significant. Even anything we get kind of midday, some light stuff into the GTA is possible tomorrow. This is what's more significant. So this is now Tuesday at 9 p.m. We'll see out ahead of the cold front, so a southwesterly flow. It's going to be breezy tomorrow ahead of this, but ahead of that cold front, we'll see these storms developing as we go into the late evening, pushing into southwestern Ontario, stretching up along the shores of Lake Huron. We'll be watching for active weather there and up into cottage country, especially the closer it is with the daytime heating and the peak kind of the daytime heating. Once the sun sets, these are the kind of storms that will likely hold somewhat together, but not have as much of a punch. They will be making their way towards the western end of Lake Ontario. Timing on this is going to be just before midnight and closer kind of to midnight before it pulls through. So some strong winds are certainly possible and some small hail here. When I say strong winds, some of those gusts could exceed 100 kilometers an hour. So that becomes a risk for seeing power lines going down and that sort of thing. There is the risk of tornadic activity as well, some isolated tornadoes. So we'll be watching carefully through tomorrow as that system moves through. On the back end of it, as we go into Wednesday, still some cloud cover, especially early, and a few showers, and then clearing out, and cooler conditions will come in, which is kind of for one day Wednesday, just back to seasonal. There you go, 30 tomorrow, feeling like 38 into southwestern Ontario, around the Golden Horseshoe tonight. Looking at a few showers, not a lot, but look at those readings for tomorrow. Some upper 20s coming at you, the cool down Wednesday, and then we'll kind of level off sort of towards the end of the week, Hilda.
Thanks, Colette. For the uninitiated, a game of cricket can look a little bit complicated, but one simple rule to doggedly follow is always keep your eye on the ball.
They're going to have to look to take two. They're going to have to take a chance now.
A cricket pitch in Northern Ireland was invaded by a very enthusiastic fan. Not of this sport, but definitely of all things that look like a game of fetch. In the process, a Cocker Spaniel named Dazzle even showed the players how it's done. The by now well-slathered ball was eventually retrieved, and the skillful fielding earned the puppy a few pets and scratches. And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Dwight Drummond has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6. I will see you back here tomorrow at 11. Have a great night.